and leaders within your communities. If people are struggling to get onto Zoom, we are live on the South African Zionist Federation Facebook page as well, so you can direct people there. Also throughout tonight, please feel free to ask questions in the chat box. We'll have a Q&A session at the end. The South African Zionist Federation is over 120 years old and aims at connecting South Africa to Israel and vice versa through politics, culture, technology, and current affairs. The Zionist Federation has many affiliate organizations such as SAFI, WITSO, SAZF, JNF, Israel Center, Habonim, B'nai Akiva, Netzer, Beitar, and Magen David Adom. The Zionist Federation plays an important role in the community through the events they organize, such as Yom HaAtzmaut, and various educational programs through schools, universities, and adult programs. The Zionist Fed plays a big role in political issues concerning Israel and South Africa. Most recently, during the pandemic, we have launched two important projects. The first project is bringing in special medical masks from Israel for Hatzolah to use. Secondly, we have launched the online platform of Ashuk, which allows small businesses to advertise their products and services and sell vouchers which can be redeemed at a later stage. Throughout this webinar, we will be hosting a competition. Please go to our Instagram page and like the post and to be entered into the draw to win an Ashuk voucher. So the Instagram page is SA Zionist Federation. So you go onto the page, like the post that will be posted tonight, and you will be entered. Yeah, there we go. There's the Instagram page post. So that's what the post will look like. Go like it and you will be entered into the competition. We will announce the winner at the end of tonight. Here is a video that best demonstrates the work the Zionist Federation do.
For over 100 years, the South African Zionist Federation has been the bridge between South Africa and Israel, bringing the best of the Holy Land to the beloved country, and vice versa. That's why, during this time of unprecedented corona crisis, the Fed is working tirelessly to access the latest medical technology from Israel, so that we can contribute to the national fight against COVID-19. Just recently, for example, the SAZF partnered with Israeli startup Synovia Tech to donate cutting-edge medical masks to Hatzolah Medical Rescue. And the Israeli-developed Chagai volunteer food delivery application is being used with great success to facilitate food deliveries within the Jewish community. Meanwhile, the SAZF's flagship program, South African Friends of Israel, is also stepping up to the plate. SAFI is an organization dedicated to creating a united coalition with other religious, cultural, and ethnic groups in the interests of building a broader grassroots support base for Israel in South Africa. SAFI's activities include combating BDS and other delegitimization campaigns, hosting events and gatherings for a diverse community of pro-Israel advocates, and supporting public figures, such as the Chief Justice of South Africa, who have come under fire for their views. Now, in this time of pandemic, our friends and supporters need our help. That's why SAFI has been busy organizing food parcels and feeding schemes, offering a much-needed lifeline to thousands of people who are going hungry as a result of the ongoing pandemic. With no jobs, no food, a deteriorating economy, and bitter winter weather, the situation really is dire. So please, let's come together as a community to help the Fed and SAFI keep hunger at bay. You can show your support by making a deposit into our dedicated coronavirus fund. No amount is too small, and every cent we raise will go towards putting food on the tables of our society's most vulnerable members. Make your donation now using these payment details. Be a light unto the nations by making your contribution today. And please share this video to spread the word about Israeli tech fighting COVID-19. The South African Zionist Federation and South African Friends of Israel, making a difference where it matters most.
I would now like to welcome our facilitator for the night, a woman who shows that it is possible to do everything, have a large family, impressive history and career at Discovery, and still manages to give back to the community. A true woman warrior, Amanda Porter.
Thank you, Kayla. You know, when you first contacted me to be involved in this webinar, I was obviously excited. It sounded like something meaningful and something dynamic and something fun, you know. And then I received the bios and the CVs of the panelists, and I have to say that I'm still excited and it's still meaningful and it's still fun. But I have to say that I feel incredibly humbled to have the opportunity to interview a group of women who are doing such profound things, who are having such tremendous impact. And I really just want to start with that. I want to start with really thanking you for including me in this. It's remarkable, and the women that you've included, the people involved in WITSO, in the SAZF, it's really, I feel very honored to be part of this panel, and I thank you very much for it. I always knew you were a biokineticist with a bit of Zionist Fed on the side. And then I receive your CV and you're a biokineticist, and then you're the vice chairperson of the South African Zionist Fed, and you're involved in the CSO, and you're an executive on the board of Zacca. I mean, it's astounding. It's quite a diverse range of organizations to be involved in. I thought that maybe before we get started interviewing the panelists, maybe we could just have a bit of a chat, and you could just talk about, you know, what preempted your involvement in the SAZF, in the Zionist Fed, and what do you love? What do you love about working and being part of the Zionist Fed story? So I'm starting with you. I hope you don't mind that, but you know, what do you love about it? What's your thing?
Okay, I think I need to start at the very beginning for this, of how I got involved, because it was a long process to get where I am. My first encounter with the Zionist Federation was in 2013, when I first joined SORGIS as the chairperson of UJ. And then that was 2013. 2014, I was the national chairperson, national vice chairperson of SORGIS. And in this role, I had to attend the monthly elected office bearers meetings. And this is where I became really passionate about the work that the Zionist Federation do. In 2016, I started my career as a bio and kind of gave community up for a little bit, but not too long, because I volunteered at the Zionist Federation, and I held amazing events for young professionals, and these events included talks by the likes of John Medved, who's the CEO of Our Crowd, and Bruce Fordyce, who's a Comrades legend. And from there, my passion for the Zionist Federation just grew and grew, and I'm definitely a true Zionist, love their work, love working with the people. So it definitely gets me excited. And then in 2017, I was appointed as the National Director for SORGIS. I was working at Biyachad full-time, and I really got to see the day-to-day runnings of the Zionist Federation. I was in their offices every day, and from this organization just blew my mind with their diversity and what they did. And when Benji Schulman approached me to run for the elections middle of last year, it was an easy decision for me, and I haven't looked back since. Definitely one of the highlights for me, highlights, lowlights, I'm not sure, is Israel Apartheid Week. As crazy as this week is and as stressful as this week is, it's just taught me so much about myself and Israel and the situation going on there. Also through the Zionist Fed, I've had so many wonderful opportunities. I've met such incredible people. I've had conversations with influential people that have really shaped who I am today.
That sounds amazing. And I think as as easy as the decision it was for you, and you not looking back, I imagine that the Zionist Fed is also not looking back at all. And then the CSO and Zacca, how did that involvement come about?
So in 2017, when I was working at Viachad with CSO there, I was like, why not? Let's see what this organization's about. And I took a leap of faith and I volunteered to do the CSO Advanced Protectors training. I had no idea what I was in for. And that this male dominant course saw me overcoming my challenges and fears and facing people double the size of me. And it took everything in me to get through this course, but I did it. And I showed myself how strong I am emotionally, physically, mentally. And also through CSO, this really led to the next step of my life. I wasn't quite sure where I was going. And on the CSO course, I actually met my husband. So that was a wonderful twist to the events. Then, because of my CSO background, Zacca approached me, and I was asked to please head up the relief department. I never in a million years I hadn't heard of Zacca, I didn't know what it was, and when I researched this incredible organization, there was no ways I could say no to this opportunity. So I just took the opportunity and ran with it, and it's intimidating. The first few meetings that I went to, sitting around a board table, being the only female, she said was intimidating, but I think I've really stood my ground. The team has embraced me, welcomed me, my points of view, and it's really been great. And I'm sure the community has seen this week, we've actually launched the fire containment unit, which is a mobile water tank that please God will contain a fire until the fire engines can get there. And the relief department is working very closely with them on that. That's been an awesome project. Geez, the amount of times we've been called out in the middle of the night for fires, for various things, it's really taught me a lot.
Maybe for our listeners, I mean, we're all very familiar with the CSO. The work they do is incredible. You know, they're outside our schools and our shuls, and they're taking our children, you know, on events and seminars and all of that. But I don't think everybody's so aware of what Zacca is and what it does. Do you want to give like maybe just a quick overview on what Zacca is?
So Zacca Search and Rescue is an Israeli organization. It was started, I think, about 30 years ago in Israel, kind of when the time of terror attacks came out. And I know this is going to be a little bit gruesome, but that's why it was started. It was started because somebody needed to clean up after terrorist attacks. And from there, they've got a cleanup crew. They've got the Zacca Search and Rescue, the urban search and rescue, which in cases of collapsed buildings and things like that, they train to go in. We've got civil engineers. We've got population intelligence.
To be honest, I can't get over that.
Find who's missing, who needs to be found. So it's very different, but it's an amazing organization.
It is amazing, and kol hakavod to you for doing it. And then this webinar is obviously one of your many initiatives, and you've put it together, and it highlights to some extent your appreciation of communal involvement. But I think more than that, Kayla, and maybe I'm wrong, I don't know, but I get a sense from you that you're not just passionate about communal involvement, you're passionate also about women immersing themselves in communal work. Zacca and CSO are not, as you said, obvious choices for women, and yet you've got involved in that. And I get the sense that it's not just about getting involved, but it's about women getting involved and taking on leadership roles within the organizations that they serve. I mean, is that correct? Am I correct? And if so, what advice can you give to the women in the audience to, as Sheryl Sandberg calls it, lean in and get involved and immerse themselves in whatever communal involvement that they want to be involved in?
Yeah, you're 100% right. I definitely am passionate about women getting involved. I believe that women have the power to do so much. And we've seen it come through and through in Jewish history, how women have always played an important role in strength and leadership. And this has definitely inspired me. I've also been brought up in a family of strong women. And I think this has definitely helped me get where I am today. They haven't sat back because they're women. and I don't think anyone should. Obviously, I mean, especially in my involvement in Zacca, there's certain things women cannot do halachically, but where women can get involved, I definitely would encourage them. My advice would be one can't sit back and wait for opportunities to come to them, because if you're sitting and waiting, nothing is going to happen. You need to get yourself out there, you need to discover what you're passionate about, and you need to just go for it. Make opportunities for yourself if they're not there. And that would be my advice.
I think it's great advice, and more than saying it, you've certainly displayed it, and you really are a role model, I think, in your endeavors. So, you know, the title for this webinar is Women's Day Warriors, and it's appropriate because what is clear about all of the panelists is that they are strong, they're determined forces to be reckoned with, they're passionate about their causes and the people for whom they're fighting. They heroically take up their plight, they take up the plight of the voiceless, the vulnerable, the defenseless, the prejudiced. You are all truly warriors, and I think that we're really going to enjoy listening to you and being inspired by you. I wanted to start off by talking to Kayla Ginsburg, our first panelist. Kayla is a BCom finance graduate studying towards an LLB at Wits. And Kayla, you've spent some time at the forefront of the fight against organizations like BDS and their attempt at delegitimization of the State of Israel. You fight against anti-Semitism. You were involved in SAZF and the World Jewish Congress. Tell us a bit about the organizations you've worked with, and maybe a story or two or some of the lessons you've learned in working with them.
Firstly, thank you so much for having me. I feel privileged to be in the presence of all the women on this panel tonight. You've done such incredible, incredible things for this community. As you see, Kayla's testament to that, all different spheres we're working in to protect this community and protect Jewish way of life. So thank you for having me. I've been privileged to work with a lot of organizations throughout my career, through Jewish advocacy, Israel advocacy, South African advocacy, SAZF, the ANC Youth League, the Zionist Federation. I've worked with some different foreign ministries, also worked with Zacca Search and Rescue, Chayenu, a whole bunch of others, and they've all had an impact on me. I think it's really hard to choose because they've all had such profound impacts on me and shaped me and my advocacy that I've done for the community in so many different ways. If I had to choose, I'd choose definitely to start with an organization like SAZF. It was where I began my career in advocacy on campus. I wasn't very involved in the community during school. I had that single track mind of looking at my academics. And I came to university and SAZF was there. University was a very scary place, which we'll get into later, but for a Jewish student and for a proud Zionist, university was a very scary place. And SAZF was there to protect Jewish students and to be their voice and to speak, like you said, be a voice for the voiceless and the students who were scared to stand up. I have spent, I think, 3 or 4 years with SAZF at various executive levels, national vice chair, treasurer, and I have to be honest, the lessons I've learned have been endless. I think it'd be very hard to pick out and give you one lesson I've learned because there's just so many to choose from that have shaped me and shaped my career. But I think one of the most important things I've learned from SAZF, and the one thing that I'd like to portray tonight, is the respect given to students and the power of not only everybody's voice in the room, but the power of voices in local and global in circles, and the impact that we had when we thought you're just speaking on a student level, it's got a real impact, and that goes for everybody who's trying to make a difference. In whatever respect you're trying to make a difference, that your voice matters and your voice can make a difference, and that was what SAZF taught me. So SAZF kind of kick-started my career into advocacy. That was very political SAZF. You're on a political battleground and it's intense at times. I moved a bit more into humanitarian sphere. And I think 2 other organizations that taught me so much and shaped me were firstly Zacca Search and Rescue, which Kayla's talked quite a bit about, so I'm not going to go too much into it, as well as Yad Aron. Both are chesed organizations doing so much for the community selflessly on a daily basis. And they both taught me the power of my Jewish identity and how lucky I am to have that Jewish identity and be a part of the community that I'm a part of. I mean, Zacca is an organization that goes to the ends of the earth to protect and to save a Jewish life. It doesn't matter whether it was 8 guys in Ethiopia for 8 days, finding 2 Jewish bodies from a plane crash, to the various projects, the FCU that Kayla spoke about, our fire containment unit, guys who are really selflessly putting themselves on the front line for the community, and being able to be involved in that and seeing the dedication and commitment through that and through Yad Aron as well has really made me value my Jewish identity. I've been Orthodox, I've been brought up in a religious home, I've always valued my faith, but seeing the extent of how people protect the Jewish community and what's given up to defend this Jewish community really made me value our values a whole lot more, if that makes sense. Yad Aron as well taught me a fortune about the chesed that gets done in this community. I mean, Mrs. Friedman, who founded Yad Aron, seeing that dedication, that commitment to feeding hundreds of Jewish families every single week is also just true testament to your voice makes a difference, and what you're going to do makes a difference. And I just want to emphasize that message of you're powerful enough to make a difference. And I think all these organizations exemplify that.
And I think that what makes your message so compelling is that you're so authentic in the way you're answering the question. You know, you get a real sense that you really love what you're doing and you really feel deeply about it. Thank you for that. You did touch on it a little bit. You said that you started university and it was a little bit scary and a bit daunting, which I suppose leads me to my next question. We opened this webinar to grade 11 and 12 students who are perhaps considering their post-school options, as well as to a wide range of audience. But as a student who is still active on campus, albeit not at the moment because of COVID perhaps, but generally still active on campus, tell us a bit about the fight against anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism, BDS. What does that look like on campus? Do you believe that those are issues? And if not, what do you believe are the biggest issues facing Jewish students on campus?
That is a fantastic question. That is a very long-winded answer. I'll try to shorten it for you. Campus is a bit of a scary place if you're a Zionist student, not all the time, but coming to campus as a very proud Zionist, having to never shield my Zionism or try shut it down and not pretend I was a Zionist. I mean, I spent a year in Midrashat Harova in the old city, living in the old city, and I was always allowed to express my Zionism in the way it felt right. And coming to campus and being a Zionist, you're punished for it. As a Jew, you're automatically assumed that you're a Zionist, that you support every decision of the Israeli government, and you're punished for it. BDS is very strong in South Africa. For anybody who's not sure, it's Boycott, Divestment, Sanctions. It's an organization that lobbies to bring down Israel through boycotts. They were founded in South Africa in 2001. And they were strategically brilliant in getting South Africa to recognize Israel as an apartheid state, because it's like Germany declaring something anti-Semitic. The world takes notice. The Germans killed 6 million of us because they were anti-Semitic. So when Germany stands up and says that, the world takes notice. And when South Africa stood up and said Israel was an apartheid state, the world started taking notice because South Africa perpetrated apartheid. So the apartheid analogy took off brilliantly on our campuses from 2001 onwards, which is when BDS was founded, spread over the world, and made life as not only a Zionist student, a Jewish student, which is problematic in and of itself. They made Zionism and Judaism synonymous. And it made life a little bit scary on campus for a Zionist student. It went from Hitler salutes to swastikas to graffiti to chants of shoot the Jew. And this is a yearly occurrence. This is happening all the time. This is not a once off. I mean, I had a friend who, it's funny, she's suing New York University for burning of an Israeli flag, and there was some harassment involved as student president. And when she showed me, I thought, that's absolutely horrific, and I'm so sorry to see that, but you would never get away with that in South Africa. This happens all the time for us. This is what we deal with on a yearly basis. So it can be scary, but that being said, I don't want to leave this as a message of fear and of being scared on campus. Campus is a great place. As a Jew, you have freedom and you have religious freedoms. Yes, it's sometimes scary to be a Zionist, but that's why Soldiers is on campus. And that's why we're doing the work we do, to protect Jewish students, to give a voice to the voiceless and the people who are too scared to stand up. And to any students who are listening to this, we need your voices on campus. Come stand up and come stand alongside us in this fight.
Thank you, Kayla. I mean, I think that your message is clear. Stand up, be proud, remember who you are, and you certainly are all of that. So thank you for that. I'm going to move on to our next panelist. We will come back to you, but maybe let's move to Nicole Merkin. Nicole is the founding director of Fight Back SA. Nikki, you teach self-defense to women and children in vulnerable communities. I mean, most people deplore gender-based violence. not everybody starts an organization to do something about it. How did you get here? What was the catalyst? Tell us a bit about your story on how you came to start Fight Back SA.
Hi, Amanda. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm very excited to be here and talk about these things with you and everybody that is listening tonight. So I've always been involved in the community organization space since I was in primary school. So that gave me a very strong foundation for my ideas about justice in society. And when I turned 18, 19 years old, I was actually held at gunpoint by 3 men. And it was a very, very terrifying experience. And I remember that I had been walking down the road in a safe neighborhood, and this car kind of drove me into the side of a wall, and 3 men jumped out, and next thing I knew, there was a gun to my throat. And I just remember thinking, this is South Africa. I cannot get put in that car. If I get put in that car, my family will not have a body to bury. And I am one of 3 daughters. And after this instance, I started looking into gender-based violence and assault and crime in general in South Africa. And it turns out that 1 in 3 women will be raped in South Africa. So, my working in community organizations, having this traumatic experience, realizing that statistically 1 of my sisters or myself would be raped in this country, kind of made me realize that we needed to do something about this. I then graduated in political science and international relations from UCT, and I started working in the field of politics. Made my way up to Parliament. I started working in the Communications and Research Directorate, and it was there that I really started to realize how bad the crime levels were in this country. And working on the portfolio of crime and police, I had to follow Courtney Peters' trial. And for those of you who don't remember, Courtney Peters was a 3-year-old whose shack mate, the man that was living with her and her mother, decided to feed her rat poison because she was annoying him. When she began to feel ill, he then decided to strangle her. He sexually assaulted her after her death, posthumously, and then dumped her body in a field. And that was the tipping point for me. Working in Parliament, realizing the government wasn't doing what it needed to be doing, and having this Courtney Peters case sitting in front of me, I just remember thinking, I wish South African women could fight back. I wish we knew how to fight back. And I wrote it down on a piece of paper, the words "fight back." And that was the beginning of a huge project. I spent the next 6 months conceptualizing how we could immediately change based on the statistics and how we could immediately make South Africa safer without relying on the government, without relying on the police, without relying on big donors. And that's how the idea of free self-defense classes for women in dangerous communities came up. A way of empowering to take their safety into their own hands. And it's been 1.5 years since we were established, and it's been absolutely amazing. We've grown from strength to strength since then.
I mean, it's absolutely astounding, really. Just kola kavod. Of everything you've said, obviously, the crime, your incident, the Courtney Peters case, nothing highlights it as much as that photograph of you standing with the president at the gates of Parliament. I don't know if we can bring up that picture, but there's a fabulous picture of you standing there. There it is. Okay, great. Thank you. At the gates of Parliament next to the president against gender-based violence. And you convened over 20,000 people in a protest. It's absolutely astounding. What do you believe are the obstacles we face in this fight against gender-based violence? And perhaps more hopefully, are there any victories? Are there any silver linings?
So I think that we face 3 big obstacles in South Africa with regards to gender-based violence. And the first one is that we have a culture of impunity in South Africa, where perpetrators are not held accountable for their actions. So it makes it very difficult to try and change something like gender-based violence when it is so difficult to convict people and make sure that people are held to account for their behavior. And this kind of transmits itself into the second obstacle that we're facing. That's our education system. As it stands right now, South Africa is in desperate need of an educational system that reassesses and re-educates the concept of consent. It so desperately needs to be addressed because we have a rape culture that has emanated from that. And I think that another thing that's very important is teaching positive masculinity to the boy child in primary school and the young man in high school. That's actually something that we are, working very hard towards. We're actually trying to draft a change to our educational curriculum to include these throughout. And then I think the third obstacle is the capacity of the state to make a difference. I mean, community-based initiatives and organizations such as ourselves, we're doing amazing work, and we're doing a lot of the groundwork and a lot of the hard work. But it's very difficult to affect change when the government doesn't make sure that every SAPS police station has a rape kit or several rape kits in stock. So if a woman is brave enough to actually report a rape or report an instance of sexual violence, 76% of South African police stations don't have rape kits in stock. So they're completely unable to gather evidence from women who have come in to say that someone has done this act against them. So again, that goes back to impunity and a culture of impunity, which we maintain when the state is unable to deliver on these things. So I think that those are the three biggest obstacles that we're facing in the fight against gender-based violence. But we do have wins, and we have wins often enough to keep us motivated. I mean, recently we've seen the introduction of new bills on gender-based violence that can help women obtain protection orders online. We've maintained a momentum over a year on gender-based violence. This Women's Month, we've seen more action and more movement to help victims and to support victims, and I think we've ever seen before since that March last year. And then I think another incredible victory is the networking and the communication systems that we've established amongst organizations. We're a part of certain WhatsApp groups where if someone sends a message and says, I have two children, I have a mother, it's a case of domestic abuse, we need a safe house. Within 15 minutes, the local organizations working on the ground are able to place that woman and her children in a safe house, are able to extract them from violent situations. And I think that this is a victory. The fact that we have established ourselves and networked ourselves in such a manner that someone who has a distress call in Gauteng can be assisted by someone who has a contact in the Western Cape. It's absolutely phenomenal, and it's something that we must remember in motivating ourselves against this fight.
I mean, I couldn't agree with you more, and really just well done. I think South Africa can be really grateful for your determination in this plight. I saw that Kayla put into the chat section the details if people want to get involved and assist in some way. If you do want to get involved, just go into that chat section and have a look and take down Fight Back SA's details because you really are doing amazing work. Thank you. Kayla, I think I'm going to hand over to you to talk to Tamara about WITSO. It's an organization filled with amazing women making a difference, so over to you.
Yes, because it's a Women's Day panel, we have to show the amazing work that women are doing. So WITSO is a very well-established organization, and it's one of the affiliates of the Zionist Federation, and they are really involved in some incredible initiatives. So we're just going to show a short clip on the work that they are doing.
been touched by this donation.
The first time I watched that video, I was truly touched by the work they do. I'm just going to introduce Tamara Aziz, who is WITSO SA president, just to chat quickly about the work that WITSO do.
Thank you, Kayla. Thank you so much. I'm a co-president. I have two other presidents with me. Another one is on the line. It's Lauren Bates in Durban and Lieve Joffe in Johannesburg. And this is a most amazing Zionist organization of women that was established. WITSO was established 100 years ago last month, and celebrating centenary. And the WITSO and the Zionist women of South Africa are active only even more. WITSO in Cape Town or North Zion 119 years, and so is Pretoria, and many more. And to be sitting on a panel with the most amazing women that I see that are really the essence of what WITSO stands for in the world. We're 250 members around the world and 50 federations around the world. So if you think of a country, you'll find a WITSO woman, and they are all like you, all those that see a potential in change, both of us as women, but as a society. And the pillars of WITSO are obviously in Israel, changing Israel's society, working on women's rights and women's status, and talking about situation of gender-based violence. And Nicole, I have to mention, I was in Cape Town at that protest, and you inspired the thousands of people that were there. You were amazing. And that's what WITSO does. So just a quick comment that during now the Corona, WITSO established unfortunately another shelter for abused women that can come for the 2 weeks quarantine before they have to go to other shelters in the country. And that was done by WITSO. The other pillar that WITSO stands for is education, children and youth, because it starts from the youth, it starts from educating the children, and that's the future of the country. When the founding mothers established WITSO, they saw that is in then Palestine, that the women that they are there that came then didn't have the support to build a country. You need to give them the tool to be able to be an equal partner in building the country, and at the same time we are looking after our children and educating the children. So those three pillars of education, children, status of women, and Zionism at a whole. So what is that to do with South Africa? And that's what I would like to speak to, and the wheelchairs of hope. So as a whole, WITSO South Africa has amazing projects in Israel that we fundraise to maintain, and those are our foster homes, our daycare centers, and the rest of WITSO's work in Israel. But as women, we know to love. Our heart is big enough to love everybody, and we're living in this country too. And we love the people that we live in within our Jewish community and the wider community. And how do we split ourselves to do all these things, to still feel with our Jewish identity within the community that we want to keep, our Zionist identity and to keep Israel strong and its people, and our South African identity and keep our country well and strong. And that's where the Wheelchair of Hope project came in. So over and above the education problem, we saw that part of Israel, WITSE's pillar is education and children's education. And through the Embassy of Israel in Pretoria, we were introduced to this non-profit organization called Wheelchairs of Hope. That is an Israeli NPO that has designed these child-friendly wheelchairs. They're 10 kilos only, lightweight, very child-friendly, as you could see with their colors. They are $100 each, and they are suitable for rough terrain as well, for areas that are not exactly easy to maneuver. The wheels, they all come packed in. And in the video, it was some years ago, those were the 50 wheelchairs, first 50 wheelchairs we bought. Since then, we have brought to the country 250 wheelchairs all across South Africa that have been donated by generous donors in South Africa. And those are donated to schools, to hospitals, to individual children, whoever needs it, as a gift for them. So those children will have mobilities in their schools, in their homes, that the parents can take them out wherever they need. And they themselves are proud of those chairs. So that is the project of and please God, we're going to hand out many more of those wheelchairs. So that's just one of the projects that WITSA does. We do other outreach during now the COVID of food parcels and join the community wherever there's support that we can give as women in the community.
Thank you so much. Such an inspiring organization.
So we're welcome everybody to join. Thank you.
Really is inspiring, and kola kavod for all the work that you do, Tamara. It's absolutely, it's astounding. Thank you very much. I'm going to move on to our next panelist. Our third panelist is Romy Wolfson. She's a young attorney who describes herself as having a passion for Zionism, the arts, and constitutional law. But Romy, you've had such an exciting journey. You completed a law degree here. Then you went to study international human rights at Oxford, which you're using to fight discrimination and anti-Semitism. Tell us a bit about your journey, and perhaps take us into what you believe are the biggest obstacles in fighting discrimination in organizations like BDS. What are some of your learnings?
Hi, Amanda. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you to Kayla and the Zionist Fed for organizing such an incredible panel tonight. It's really such an honor and so inspiring to see so many powerful women in the South African community. You're right, being very lucky and privileged. Last year I was able to go to the Oxford International Human Rights Law Summer School after I completed my articles. And I had the opportunity to interact with students from around the world and learn from international experts. And it was there that I was privileged to go to the ISGAP conference, which stands for the Institute for the Study of Global Anti-Semitism and Policy. And that's where I was able to hear a huge role model of mine, Natan Sharansky. And that's thanks to Jade Weiner, who I'm sure is listening tonight. And as their co-chairs, they have Prof. Alan Dershowitz and Erwin Kotler. And I feel that it's really important that people understand what BDS is actually all about, because it's not a campaign that is interested in logical or rational, legitimate criticism to promote like political change or advance peace, but rather its ultimate goal is actually about, as Kayla had mentioned before, it's about the dissolution of the State of Israel. And while it has the veneer and markets itself as a human rights organization, it in fact pursues this hardline agenda against Israel. And thank goodness, last year, the German parliament passed this historic resolution where it actually said that the methods that BDS uses are anti-Semitic, and that was followed by the US, where they held a bipartisan resolution in the US House of Representatives where they said that BDS is actually undermining the very legitimacy of Israel. And so I think it's important that our country and other governments around the world take similar resolutions. But thankfully, like in our post-apartheid South Africa and our world-renowned constitution, we haven't had the same level of anti-Semitic attacks. But I think people also need to realize that that Hamas and other terrorist organizations, it was revealed last year in a report from the Israeli Ministry of Affairs, that they are linked very much so with BDS. But it is changing in South Africa, because I think on a global scale, there's been this rapprochement between Arab states, like between the UAE and Saudi Arabia and Israel, and also the BDS locally has splintered into different factions. So no one's actually quite sure who is the real voice of BDS today. And they weren't successful in their academic boycotts of UCT or in trying to stop an Israeli bottling company from acquiring a massive company here, Clover. So I think in my field, it's been, the biggest obstacles have been trying to use the law to combat this irrational and illogical movement. And I take inspiration from organizations like the Lawfare Project in New York, where they take on anti-Semitic cases, and they've represented Israel in the International Criminal Court. And back home, this is what I'm involved with now, there've been a line of hate speech cases where, for example, members of the ANC government have posted like very racist comments online. And thankfully, there have been good judgments where, in terms of the Equality Act, where the judge has listed what amounts to hate speech. But unfortunately, at the moment, the areas become quite blurry and unclear, because there are two cases that are actually on appeal at the Constitutional Court, because in the Supreme Court of Appeal, the one case actually struck down provisions of the Equality Act, saying that that definition of hate speech was unconstitutional. So we're actually waiting for the judgments and hoping that the Constitutional Court will take a bold move, which will act as a big blow to the BDS movement in determining what are the limits between free speech, freedom of expression, and hate speech.
And how will it play out? What is your prediction?
Sure, we are hoping that it's a really tough one, because you know the courts are quite reluctant to enter into what they think are political debates.
Right.
But at the end of the day, as academics and constitutional lawyers will recognize that there is this inherent connection between law and politics, and you know, it's very hard to try and separate the politics from the law, but you know, we have to remember the constitutional values of our country and not put our own politics into the case. I think you see that in the Mogoeng matter as well, where he said that, you know, no matter his Christian values, he has to abide by the values of the Constitution in his rulings. So yeah, and that connects with our project for the SAZF.
I was about to bring that up. You're running a program in conjunction with the SAZF, and tell us a bit about it. What is it, and what are you trying to achieve through it?
So I'm really excited to be running this program with the SAZF, and we're in the process of recruiting a number of really talented lawyers and academics. So as I tell you more about it, if you're interested in getting involved, please feel free to send me a message or an email. So it's actually the first of its kind in South Africa. It's sponsored by the International Legal Forum, which is an organization based in Israel that is working to develop an international network of lawyers that are dealing with the same issues of anti-Semitism, fighting BDS, combating terrorism. And through this initiative, we will be giving the South African perspective to the network, and we hope to learn from others in the network on how to fight these similar issues. So the first project that we're running is our academic articles on these issues, which will be published in like leading legal journals around the world, we hope. And the second are opinion pieces that are going to be intended for the general public on similar issues, also on legal issues, but in order rather to educate, because we find that one of the main reasons that people support organizations like BDS is often just a lack of education or misinformation on these issues. And we hope that by showing the ability to use like constitutional law and other legal tactics, that we'll be able to show people, you know, the true face of BDS and what's really going on behind the scenes. So yeah, it's a really exciting project, and I'm very lucky to have a lot of great advocates and that on board. So yeah, we're also very privileged to have our constitution that we can use as a framework to confront these issues in an innovative and constructive way. And we hope to be able to connect with others in the network. So yeah, if you're interested, give me a shout.
Amazing. And I think that Benji Shulman did put it into the chat section, how to get in touch with Romy. If you do want to get involved in the projects, there's going to be a lot more marketing and encouragement around getting involved, I'm sure. But if you do want to get involved, please go into the chat section and just take down the details. It's absolutely amazing, and really, Romy, just well done. It's important. It will be interesting, I think, how the fracturing of the BDS in South Africa plays out. I think that will be fascinating as well. But I think you're right. I think that we have a very robust constitution, and hopefully it will stand in good stead. So thank you for your efforts.
God, thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay, again, we'll come back to the speakers shortly, but I want to move on to Kelly Otis. Kelly is currently serving as the spokesperson in the IDF spokesperson's unit. She studied a BA degree in government diplomacy and strategy at RDC in Herzliya, where she graduated cum laude. Kelly, tell us a bit about let's start off. Tell us a bit about your decision to study at RDC, and what prompted that decision, and what prompted the choice of subjects. Were you always interested in government, diplomacy, etc.? And then perhaps take us through a bit of your journey, because you did 2 internships, one as part of an Israeli mission to the UN, and the second in the Abba Eban Institute. And if I pronounce that incorrectly, do correct me as you answer the question. But tell us firstly about that journey.
Thank you, Amanda. And firstly, I want to say that I'm so proud to be here tonight as a part of the South African Jewish community. Although I've left South Africa and I've made Aliyah, I still very much feel a part of the South African community, and very happy actually that every time I tell an Israeli or an international in Israel that I come from South Africa, they always say, wow, the community that really dedicates themselves to Israel, and they really appreciate us. So I'm so grateful to be here. Well, my story kind of begins when I was in South Africa. I think I always had Zionism in my heart, whether it came from King David Linksfield, which was my high school. I was very active in the Judaica and Zionism committee, and at Bnei Akiva. But I think that a major turning point for me was when I was elected to be on the Johannesburg Junior Council in grade 11, which is a council when they choose representatives from every school, and you sit at Wits campus once every 2 weeks and have meetings with students from all over Johannesburg, Zionist, not Zionist, Jewish, not Jewish. And I think that was my first experience of really taking on the role somehow of being the Zionist and being the Jewish girl, that I'd never really been outside of the Jewish or Zionist bubble. And I really fell in love with this idea of, wow, I have the ability to tell other people what Zionism is about. And then I found IDC, and I'd always been interested in politics and diplomacy. The degree was very much suited to everything that I'm passionate about and want to do.
And I guess the love for Israel, the excitement to travel the world a little bit, to get out and to really make a difference, it kind of all came together into the decision to study in Israel, in Herzliya. And with regards to my journey, I have done quite a few things that are I didn't expect them to come in my path. During my studies, I got the opportunity for 3 months to work at the United Nations in New York as an intern, where I was responsible for writing speeches for the Israeli diplomats. And I attended meetings and was lucky enough to be there during the time where it is the United Nations General Assembly. This is the General Assembly where all the world leaders get to come and speak, and we all have heard Benjamin Netanyahu's speeches and President Trump. It was really an exciting time. I think that it also felt a little bit isolating when you're Israel and you represent Israel and you're sitting amongst many countries that are voting against you. It does bring to your attention the serious need to make sure that you really represent with all you can and to give your greatest effort in order to stand up for what you believe in. My internship at the Abba Eban Institute, so yes, that's pronounced correctly, it was under the leadership of Ron Prosor. When I was in the United Nations, I wrote speeches for Ambassador Danny Danon, and Ron Prosor happened to be the ambassador before Danny Danon, and he created an institute called the Abba Eban Institute. In this institute, I worked on a project that exposed the terrorist activities of Hezbollah to the German government, which resulted in the German government declaring Hezbollah as a terrorist organization. It was a lot of research and a lot of diplomatic efforts from Israel's side and with German parliamentarians. That is what I did there.
Amazing. I mean, it's astounding. So today you're a spokesperson in the IDF's spokespersons unit, and you mentioned writing speeches, but what does it mean to be the spokesperson? What are some of the issues you cover in this role? And maybe give us however much inside scoop you can, given that there's obviously a tremendous amount of confidentiality that goes into your role, but who are some of the interesting people you've engaged with, and you know, are there any stories you can tell us in some of the experiences that you've had?
Sure. Well, being a spokesperson, to describe it in a few words, it's definitely a 24/7 job. You definitely have to make sure that whenever something happens, you're on the ball and you know what's going on. How it works specifically with my job is I'm in the international department. This means that when something happens that the IDF is involved in, I'm the contact point between the IDF and news stations such as CNN, Fox News, New York Times, Washington Post, BBC, all of those big news stations that really post the situation as they see it. And it's very important as a spokesperson of the IDF to make sure that what we know as the story is let out to the world. It's oftentimes that the media is very, there's fake news. It's a concept that we have to deal with nowadays. And we really try as spokespeople of the IDF to make sure that everything that is said is accurate. And if it's not accurate, to try and change it. So, for example, it's nowadays the new type of war is definitely on media, on social media. We see it all the time that these inflamed discussions happen, and there needs to be some order and some, people giving facts. I would believe that, an example of something we would do is if there's a story that goes up on the news that is incredibly not based on facts, which could happen a lot when it comes to situations of conflict within Israel and the Palestinian territories. If we have facts on how an event took place, and we see that in the headlines in the international news, it is not, accurate according to what we've documented. So it is our job as spokespeople to really call the news agencies to tell them, we see that your headlines are not accurate. We're the contact point, the voice basically of the IDF military. There's a lot of times we have to reply to their queries. They have lots of questions that are often based on things they see on social media that might not be true, and we have to go through that process in order to ensure that it is actually, that our side of the story is said and is mentioned. And I think that it's a lot to do with, making sure that we're standing up for our narrative and our story, and to be on the ball and to be fast is definitely something that we take very seriously, because if we're a few minutes late, we could miss out on those opportunities in the news where everything can be turned against us.
I hear that. And I think that we can all feel very, very lucky that someone like you is watching things like that. I don't think it was always Israel's skill to communicate the facts. They kind of just did what they did. They did the right thing as a country, and that was it. They didn't worry too much about the communication. When you call these news agencies, whatever it is, how willing are they to change that narrative? And to what extent are they susceptible to the fact change, perhaps?
I think it's a very confusing subject, because on one hand, there's a lot of foreign correspondents that are based in Israel, and they truly do want to, respect the ethics of journalism and to really report what they see. I think there is a difference in what happens in their editing. They have correspondents that sit in Israel, and then they have editing people who sit abroad, and those people sometimes do change the narrative. I think that we have succeeded to change headlines. Instead of saying Israeli kills and then a number of Palestinians, which is not always the case, we do manage to, make the change. I wouldn't say that it happens very often, but I'm also quite new in this role, so I haven't had enough experience to see. I do think that what we do manage to do that is positive, and we see on a daily basis, is we offer positive things that the IDF is doing in the fight against Corona, technologically, how we're advancing. These are things we try and offer to the news to show them, look at the other side of the IDF army that is not involved in conflict and that is more involved in innovation and contributing to the world, whether it's helping with natural disasters or offering aid. And those do really get posted a lot. Maybe not on primetime news, but definitely when you open pages on CNN on their website, you'll see. And we really pride ourselves in that, because every step forward is a step to more legitimization and to show the other side of Israel that is not always seen.
Amazing. I'm sure it's a very exciting role, and I'm sure it's a very busy role as well. I'm also sure that there must be moments when you think to yourself, oh my goodness, I can't actually believe this is my job. It's a job, and yet this is what you're busy doing. Well, just well done, and kol hakavod for everything you're doing. Kayla, I'm handing back to you for Project 10. Over to you.
Thank you. Project 10 is a project of the Jewish Agency and is a volunteer organization with one of its bases in KZN, which forms part of a global initiative looking after and improving local communities through education, agriculture, and skills development. Project 10 is always looking for volunteers. If you want to get involved, please contact the Israel Center and we'll post their details. We're just going to see a quick clip on Project 10.
Every single day is so significant. Every single day is so full.
Really, it's one of the best things I've ever done.
The program itself taught me a lot about acceptance, and I felt very accepted.
Every day here, I'm learning something new and I'm observing so much.
We are with the community, mixed between them, working with them all the time.
We live their life, we eat their food.
Sometimes there's no electricity, there's no water.
Sustainability, I would say, is top priority for us.
All this program is based on giving to the local community and the people who really need the help.
The volunteers, they are not only part of the school, they are part of my family.
When the volunteers leave, another group comes.
The children are benefiting from Project 10.
This is an ongoing, sustainable process.
And it's amazing to see how they develop.
We bring our model, we bring who we are. At the same time, we respect what the community has.
I think this is an amazing space for people to meet one another in the most meaningful, deep, honest, open way.
If you are out there and you want to contribute, I'm telling you the time is now.
You need to be passionate about working with people.
If you're an open-minded person and you want personal growth and you want to give back to the community, I think this is the best program.
It's amazing to work in a place like this.
You need to come with open mind, ready to learn a lot.
It's a life-changing experience for every prospective volunteer.
I would like to introduce Tamara Aziz, who is the director of Project 10, just for a quick minute, just to tell us a little bit more about this.
Thank you, Kayla. Hi, everyone. My name is Tamara Aziz. I hope you guys can hear me. My computer connection is not so good. I've been with Project 10 for the last 3 years, and I've actually been living in Uganda for the last 3 years. It was the director of our center in Uganda, and I also spent right before COVID, 3 months in our Project 10 center in Durban, South Africa. So I'm really excited to be here. In Project 10, we really have two main goals. One of our goals is to do ethical international development. And we do that by working in the educational sphere. And our second goal is giving a chance for Jewish young people between the ages of 18 to 30 to meet themselves in a different setting. We have our volunteers are either Israelis or Jews from around the world, and they come for 3 to 5 months. And we volunteer with non-Jewish communities, but a huge part of what we do is for them to be able to do something Israeli, something Jewish, and a little bit different. So we offer another style of work, which was not normally offered to Jewish young people before, and that's what we do. We have centers around the world. We work in South Africa, Ghana, Uganda, Mexico, Samos, Greece, where we work with the refugee community from Syria, Afghanistan, and African countries too. And we have 2 beautiful centers in Israel where we work and volunteer with the Bedouin community, one in the south and one in the north. That's who we are. We are an organization based in the Jewish Agency, and we love working in South Africa. We have a great connection with the Jewish community there, which is something we don't have in our other centers, obviously. And thank you. I'm really enjoying listening to you guys, and you can hear all about us on social media and our website. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask later. I don't want to take up a lot of time, but thank you so much for including us.
Thank you so much, Tamara.
And I think, again, Benji did put all the details into the chat section. So if anybody wants to get involved, do get involved there. We're coming towards the end of the formal part of the webinar. We're going to open up to some questions. But before we do, just a final thought or some parting words, maybe just a minute to close. Back to Kayla Ginsburg. We'll circle back to you. If you could give us one piece of advice or perhaps a suggestion on how to get involved, a message perhaps of hope or of awareness for the audience or specifically for students, what's your one message?
Are you going to kill me if I make it 2 very small messages to the young people in the crowd tonight?
No, you can go.
Firstly, just your studies are not your life. Like a lot of students come out of school, grade 12, they've got this single track mind of just their grades mean everything. Give back, do something for your community. And not only does it build you in ways that you can't even imagine and help people who really need the help, but your employers really want a well-rounded candidate. They don't want somebody who's cracking 95s and not giving back to the community around you. So that's just something practical. But a message I'd really, really love to leave everybody with, all ages, irrespective, is that if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. And Malcolm X said that. And so you need to know what you stand for. Be passionate, be committed, believe in that cause with your whole heart. For me, it was my Judaism. It was ensuring that our community was able to live freely and safely as Jews in South Africa, practice our Zionism. And I worked with this on many fronts, whether it was SAZF or World Jewish Congress on the political front, DL Link, Zacca on the more humanitarian ground. There are no rules for what you have to stand for, but just stand for something. Don't just float through life not standing for something, not being passionate for something. So take that first step towards your goals. You can accomplish more than you believe in. Your mind is your only limitation. Don't let it play games with you. And just thank you for having me.
It's a great message. Thank you, Kayla. To Nicole, you're living in South Africa. In your line of work, you probably see some of the harshest elements of our beautiful country. How do you stay motivated? Are you able to give a message of hope to those who want to stay in South Africa and make a difference?
So sometimes it is hard. It is very hard being in this line of work. We don't just teach free self-defense. We also distribute free pepper sprays to women living in dangerous areas. We offer free counseling and free legal advice, and obviously we lobby in government, but sometimes it is very hard to be sent photos of the reconstructive facial surgery that a grandmother needs because the gangster had a go at her. And it is hard, but I'm motivated because we are providing women with the skills that they need to change the outcome of a violent situation. You know, we're putting the control in their hands. We're putting the control over their safety of their bodies in their hands. And to me, that is something phenomenal. And that is something that can spread like wildfire because one woman can teach the next, who can teach the next. And if I have to think about a message of hope for people that are remaining in South Africa and how they can get involved, there are so many ways that you can contribute in the fight against gender-based violence. I mean, you don't need to be going into the dangerous areas to be doing community work. I mean, you could, and we would love to have you. You can join our trainers in teaching, you know, the principles of Krav Maga to the women in these areas. But you can also buy art. The Embrace Initiative is an incredible platform where you can just buy local art from local artists and designers, and the proceeds get split between you know, organizations that are fighting gender-based violence. You can reach out and volunteer. Contact Lucinda Evans from Felisa Abafazi Betu. Spend a day on the ground, you know, in crisis and safety shelters. You can start initiatives, become an entrepreneur. At the moment, we are busy selling bralettes with a local entrepreneur, and for every bralette that is sold, we're able to sponsor the self-defense class for 12 young women. So there's a range of ways that you can get involved, and I'm saying to young people, to everyone in this country, do these things, because imagine what South Africa could be like if it was a country in which we dismantled and changed the chain effect of violence, not just with regards to women, but if we showed perpetrators that the culture of impunity in this country is going to end. You're going to be held accountable for your actions. And every single woman that goes through our workshops, she learns how to break an elbow. She learns how to break a leg. So we're going to change things, and we're changing things fast. And there is hope to be found in that.
Amazing. And I have no doubt that you will, Nikki. You are absolutely inspiring. Romy, in a short amount of time, you've gained a deep understanding of anti-Semitism and the delegitimization of Israel. Many of us are not as skilled or knowledgeable when it comes to arguing the case for Israel or against anti-Semitism. What's your one message that you'd like the audience to remember in this regard? Or perhaps, what's the one thing that we should know or bear in mind when faced with the debate?
Thanks, Amanda. Well, I think it's good to know that critics have been trying to analyze this for years, and even specialists like Alan Dershowitz have committed their whole lives to trying to defend Israel. So it's very hard to give one message, but I would say that Natan Sharansky came up with this innovative, what he called the 3D test, to distinguish between legitimate criticism of Israel, and anti-Semitism. And these are demonization, delegitimization, and double standards. And these are the three most important tools that anti-Semites used throughout history against the Jewish individual and are now being used against the collective Jewish identity being Israel. And as he writes, Alan Dershowitz, he says that Israel has become like the Jew amongst the nation, the object of disproportionate attention, excessive criticism, and sometimes excessive praise. That Israel is the only country whose very existence is challenged because of disagreements with particular policies it pursues. And so I think a lot of people are fearful or complacent to even engage in these kinds of debates. And I encourage people not to remain silent because words have power in a positive or a negative way. And if we see that it only begins with hateful words, if we look at history, we can follow where those hateful words landed up. So we're free to criticize Israel, I think, as long as it comes from a place of love and a place of respect. And as I like to always say, as Amos Oz says, I love Israel even when I cannot stand it. On that note, I think everyone just needs to take a deep breath and don't lose your sense of perspective.
Very nice, thank you.
Thanks,
Kelly.
And thank you so much for having all of us. It's been incredible.
You ladies are incredible. Kelly, you've set your sights on pursuing a career that influences and has positive impact on Israel. I mean, it's bold and it's ambitious. What advice can you give to listeners in terms of following their dreams and passions? And perhaps what do you believe are some of the key attributes that are required to achieve one's goals?
I think it's a very good question and a very important question. And I think that if I had to sum it up, it would actually be something my commander said to me in the army, which is jump into the deep water. When I first arrived, I was really nervous. Everything was in Hebrew. I, didn't think that I would be able to find my place. Even though I do speak Hebrew now and everything is okay, it was overwhelming. And I thought, wow, this is my passion, but how am I ever going to be able to succeed in it? And I really think that jump into the deep water is something that I will remember for the rest of my life. You need courage in order to achieve your goals. You need bravery. You need to do things that take you out of your comfort zone because that's really where you grow the most. And I think that passion is power. So if you believe in yourself and you have the passion and you jump into the deep water and really take those steps, I definitely think that any goal is achievable, especially in our world where everything is within reach. I think that something that inspires me every day is that I arrive to the office and 19 to 24-year-olds are changing news headlines across the world. And it's really, in a nutshell, an example of Israel, such a young country with so much to give, such young people with so much to give. And I definitely think that with courage and with passion, anything is achievable.
I agree with you, and you certainly have lots of that. I have to say that I started off this evening, already humbled by the caliber of panelists and the impact that you're all having. And having listened to you and to Tamara and Witso and the work of the Zionist Fed, even more so, you are such inspiring role models. You really are warriors, and you've provided the audience, I think, with some food for thought, with inspiration, and hopefully more than that, with the impetus to, just like you, stand up and make a difference. And the result is that as we look through the questions that are coming in, there actually aren't as many questions as there are comments, like beautiful, amazing comments, just complimenting each and every one of you on how erudite you are, on how authentic you are, and what amazing role models. If you have a moment, you should all just scroll through some of the comments and see some of the comments that people have placed there. I think they're right. I think that it really is an incredibly inspiring panel. I do have four questions, actually, one for each of you, and I just want to check with Kayla, do we have time for them, or are we running out of time? There are some really lovely questions, but I'm conscious of time.
I think maybe if they can just give a 1 minute max answer, That'll be great. And then we'll start wrapping up.
Okay, fabulous. Okay, brilliant. So Nicole, the first question was for you. How do young women react when you teach them Krav Maga? You know?
So there hasn't been a single workshop which hasn't been filled with screams of laughter and just these huge empowering smiles on women's faces. And I think what's so amazing about Krav Maga is it truly teaches you how to fight for your life. So the fact that we've incorporated disarming a gun, disarming a knife, we've even got some incredible anti-rape tactics that are based on the principles of Krav Maga that we teach young women. For all of those of you who have followed Uyinene's story from last year, we teach girls how to get out of the situation she found herself in before she died, before she was murdered. So it is incredibly empowering, and women walk out of our workshops more confident. They're looking up, their shoulders are back, and they know if someone attacks me, I can put them down on the ground, I can break their elbow, and I can snap their leg. No one is taking advantage of my body today.
Amazing. Amazing. Romy, the second question was for you. What are you looking for in terms of wanting legal volunteers, and what are the expectations?
So we're going to be discussing, we're actually going to be having a preliminary meeting tomorrow night to discuss like the broad range of issues. But basically someone that is also passionate about human rights and constitutional law and you know, fighting these issues, as you said. Obviously someone with a legal background would be fantastic because there is a legal focus. And yeah, give us a shout and we'll give you all the details. We'd be happy to have you.
Amazing. And then Kayla, how can people join soldiers on campus? What are the different ways for them to go about reaching out to soldiers?
Practically, our details on our Facebook page. Kayla's put my email address up on my number. You're welcome to contact me, but it's really just a matter of clicking on the link, signing up, giving us your details. You'll be added to all our networks, so when something's happening, you'll know about it. But please join. Don't wait to have a test on a Shabbos or an exam on a Chag or some incident with BDS and then tell us you really needed our help. Get to know us. We are not scary and we don't bite.
Thank you. And then the question for Kelly is, how do you interact with journalists and how do you manage the language barriers?
So firstly with the language barriers, we have a bunch of different people in our office that speak different languages. We have a desk for Russian, a desk for French, a desk for Spanish. So that is, it's not a challenge for us. Also, most of the journalists do speak English. And how do we interact with them? I must say we call them at all hours of the night if something happens. We really try and do everything we can to, you know, they also want to hear our side. So it's a mutual relationship. We help each other. And I think that sometimes it is a bit of a, you know, a challenge to get our information out in the best way. And as quick and effectively as possible, but we're in contact with them almost 24/7 on WhatsApp, phoning them. You know, it's a very dynamic relationship.
It sounds chaotic, fabulously so. Okay, so I think we're going to, before I hand over to Kayla, who will announce the winner of the competition that she mentioned earlier and maybe just close off this amazing webinar, I just want to thank you all. Listening to you all is inspiring, and what strikes me overwhelmingly is that you all share deep passion for the organizations or causes that you're involved in. You've all put a tremendous amount of effort into those causes. It hasn't come without the hard work that goes into it, and I think it's important to acknowledge that. But for me, what resonates the most is your incredible optimism. In some of the most dire circumstances, you've got incredible positivity in building a better world, in making the world a better place. So thank you to all of you for inspiring us tonight with messages of hope. And may you all just go from strength to strength. Really, kol hakavod to all of you. Kayla, over to you.
Thank you so much for joining tonight. Hope you all took something out of it and are left here feeling inspired by these absolutely incredible warriors. I'd also like to thank Amanda for taking time out of her busy schedule, not only tonight, but in the last few weeks and helping put this all together. We will be sending you an Ashok voucher as a token of our appreciation.
It's been an absolute honor, Kayla. Honestly, it's been an absolute privilege to be part of it.
Our auditors have also picked a winner for our Instagram competition, and the winner is Nicole Smith. We will be in touch with you during the week. You get a 180 Rand Ashok voucher. There are some amazing businesses on there, all Jewish businesses that you can support in this time. I'd also like to thank Lisa, Yvette, Benji, David, and Terry for all the work behind the scenes. And in the next 2 weeks, we also have two amazing events coming up. On the 12th of August, we have showcasing our SA community, and on the 16th, we have Cooking with Israel. Those are two things that are coming up. And thank you all for watching tonight, and happy Women's Day.
Kayla, kol hakavod to you for putting it all together. You didn't mention yourself and no one mentioned you, so I just want to quickly throw it in there. Kol hakavod to you.